Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Digicast Weekly, the weekly podcast in which the subjects, the guests, and the lengths are completely random. I have with me what for you will be the first time, because I'm going to release this one very early, because it's about a current subject, Boyd Mardis. Say hello.
Hello everyone.
Also known as Akira Fudo on Twitter and Tumblr, I guess?
Various social network medias.
Right, and
media
you are also Kabukimono Unlimited production company.
That is my production company.
I'm introducing you because even though we've already recorded several podcasts together, this is the first one that will be broadcasting, and we're going to talk about a movie we just saw for the first time.
Literally just got home from the movie.
Pacific Rim.
Oh
shit.
Oh, yeah.
First, a little primer on this movie. What is it? Because obviously we knew about it way before it came out.
Yeah.
How long ago did you first hear about Pacific Rim?
As soon as I heard about At the Mountains of Madness falling through, probably about a week or so later, it was announced that Pacific Rim was in development.
So years ago, more than a year ago, you would say.
Yeah. Definitely. Probably about two and a half years ago.
So you've been hyped for this movie forever.
Yeah, as soon as I heard what the premise is, I was like, oh my god.
And what is the premise? It is a movie by Guillermo Del Toro.
Who, has immediately, he's been one of my favorites, but, he is,
As of Pacific Rim is, what, one of your favorite...
has become one of my favorite movies of all time now. And just Del Toro as a director has become immediately top 3, top 2.
Top 2 with whom?
Takashi Miike.
And so then it would be Takashi Miike, Guillermo Del Toro, and then who would be after him? Who? I mean, really, you're gonna put him above Tarantino?
I mean,
because I do believe that Inglourious is still your favorite movie. Yeah.
Yes, I would have to see Pacific Rim a couple more times before I declare that it'd be my favorite movie of all time. But
so you're ready to rate those kind of statements. You're really fucking excited about this movie.
Yeah, I just completely
But I also, I
do
know you. I know you to jump to that kind of conclusion about favorites. I've seen you do it before.
True. But, I mean...
Right. I mean, you'd have to watch some others, in a group to get, watch a bunch of your favorites.
Well, yeah, because I definitely see myself seeing Pacific Rim again.
Multiple
again.
Times. Yeah.
Again and again.
What's the most you've seen a movie in theaters? Was it Inglourious?
It was Inglourious. I saw 7 or 8 times in theaters.
Holy fuck. I thought you'd seen it 5 times.
No, it was way more than that.
Are there any other movies you've gone to see multiple times?
The Avengers. I think I saw that 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I think The Dark Knight I saw twice in theaters.
Right. So, anyway, moving along. Guillermo Del Toro, why he's important, why his name alone was enough to get us excited about this movie. I mean, if you told us that they were making a giant... Because what this is, if you have no hype or information about it whatsoever, it's a giant robot versus giant monsters movie. A kaiju movie, for those who don't know that term, which is defined at the beginning of the movie and used throughout. A kaiju is a giant monster. Classically, it's a Japanese word. It comes from, Godzilla and... Gamera, all those kinds of giant monsters were called kaiju. And this movie starts off by defining the word kaiju and the word Jaeger, which is the name of the robots, at the start of the movie, and then they call it kaiju throughout.
Yeah.
They never offer more explanation. It's just literally defined in text at the start so that you're primed on why this word is coming up.
Yes.
But it is a kaiju film with giant robots, known as Jaegers, and they are very much in the fashion of 60s or 70s giant robots.
Definitely.
More so than the modern-esque ones, which we'll get into more later.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was like giving a primer, but then I slipped in some information, really old fags, old robot fans you care about. But that is the general summary. And if you told me that someone was making a movie like that, I'd be real skeptical, right?
Yeah, definitely. If it was anyone else other than Del Toro, I'd be like, right. It sounds cool, but the guy,
but you gotta wait to see it.
Yeah.
Because obviously, we live in a post-Transformers age. We've seen the Transformers movies. When those were announced, you couldn't help but be like, Transformers movie, sounds awesome. And then you go and see it, and you're like, that wasn't that good, and then they make more, and they just keep getting worse, and
So it was almost like Giant Robots kind of left a bad taste in everyone's mouth.
Right, Giant Robots, and you don't know how they're gonna handle, because what was the last American kaiju movie? Godzilla, which is awful.
Yeah.
Roland Emmerich, and I don't even hate Roland Emmerich. That movie is really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Which oddly, for some reason, I guess it's probably just because of the whole like Pacific Rim hype that I wanted to rewatch that movie.
Right. Don't bother. It's really fucking bad.
I know it's bad, but I still just want to watch it.
Right. Yeah, the reason that Guillermo Del Toro is someone to be excited about for this is because he directed, best known for Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes.
And also he did the 2 Hellboy movies.
Yes.
What am I missing?
Blade 2,
right,
Mimic.
That was like his first one, right? Blade 2.
No.
Or his first like known one.
His are you talking about like
Blade 2, right?
Big budget?
Yeah, like his first like major.
I'd say that's probably like one of his bigger, definitely probably, I think that is his first big budget movie because before that it was Kronos, and then I think Mimic. Actually, I think Mimic was his first big studio movie.
I've never even heard of Mimic, so it can't be too big.
I mean, it's a studio movie,
right?
But it's like one of those ones where like it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, just because of studio hands, like just fucking with it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, with Del Toro, basically, Pan's Labyrinth, if you haven't seen it, it is a classic.
Yeah.
Did that win any Academy Awards?
Yeah, it won for Best Cinematography.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if Best Special Effects, I'm not sure on that one, but...
Pan's Labyrinth is definitely a cult classic, if not a classic in its own right. It is in Spanish, which is why not everyone has seen it, you know? But it was a really dark and like it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
It is a dark fantasy tragedy, basically. It's a fantasy movie, but not a high fantasy movie. It's a really down to earth, weird, inventive fantasy movie, and it definitely deserves its classic status. It's very much the kind of movie you could show like snobs and they love it.
Yeah, like it doesn't show the fantasy like aspect in your face at all.
It definitely introduced, because that movie, it was made in like 2006, I want to say.
I think 2006, 2007, around that area.
And it still looks beautiful, like unbelievably beautiful. And the reason for that is that Guillermo Del Toro loves practical effects. He builds his monsters. He doesn't use CG, even though the technology existed. But if you look at King Kong, which came out in 2004, doesn't look very good anymore.
No, actually, I think they came out in 2005, 2006.
Whenever it
came out after the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Right. And King Kong does not look very good by today's standards, like technology.
I think like because King Kong was done in mocap, like motion capture.
Right.
And that could be like a reason why it just didn't look that good.
All I know is that the CG does not look like it doesn't look up to like when that movie came out, it was mind blowing.
Yeah,
everyone was like, "This is the best CG I've ever seen." But you look at it now, and you're like, "CG's come so far that now it doesn't look as good. It doesn't look like a modern movie." But Pan's Labyrinth looks unbelievable.
Yeah,
because it was all done without CG. It was done by making these elaborate costumes that look.
I think you can. The only thing you could say that is CG is the little fairy.
They're not. Those were the little fairies that fly around.
Well, no, I'm saying I know they made like a practical model of it.
Yeah, no, those were puppets.
I see.
Those are fucking puppets. Because when I read that, I was like, what?
Right.
Because they fly around like crazy.
Well, I knew. Yeah. Well, I figured like they would have to use CG at some point.
No, they use like. I mean, I think they said that the wings might have been CG.
That's what I'm referring to.
But it was like they use like some kind of advanced puppeteering method to like make those happen. Advanced
puppeteering.
Yeah, like they had to invent like some new method of puppeteering. From what I read, it was crazy. It's like all practical effects. Is what I remember reading.
Right.
For the most part, obviously digitally enhanced like visuals, you know, but it's costumes, and that's why they still look good, you know, because he did good costume work, and continued to do so with Hellboy 2, which has the coolest looking monsters ever.
Yeah, I would have to say that the scene where they're in the Monster City is probably like one of my favorite scenes of like all time.
In cinema. Even Roger Ebert, I remember reading his review, and he said he was going to go through it frame by frame. He was like, that was the coolest looking thing I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Because I mean, you don't really like get stuff like that with like monster movies and like creature features and shit. You know, it just seems like every like these creature features, it's like almost like the same shit. Like it's all like overdone, like monsters, just like too much going on with them. And with Del Toro monsters, it's like everything. He knows how to create a monster inside and out.
His theory with monsters is that they have to make sense. He said, I don't want a monster that just looks like he said that he wants his monsters to look like they live, like they have like everything on their body makes sense, like they would have been a product of evolution, basically. You know, he would say he wants to know the actual way that his monsters' bodies function and shit. You know, like that's important to him, and really comes through in Hellboy 2, where the whole theme of the movie is monsters and how they live and operate. And so, knowing all that, coming into Pacific Rim, you're thinking, if anyone should be doing a monster movie, it should be Del Toro.
A movie of this caliber.
And he's like, I'm going to do a giant monster movie.
Right.
You know? So Del Toro's already proven himself with monsters. He's proven himself time and again with monsters. He's done monsters for movies that he didn't even direct. He did Splice, which is all about like the genetics of this monster coming together. It's a great design and great from that perspective.
It's his, it's a Frankenstein movie. You know, just fusing these different parts of different of different animals and even humans, and creating just this amalgamation of a creature.
And that movie definitely emphasizes the evolutionary and like biological traits of the monster.
Definitely.
And so going into Pacific Rim, knowing this guy is a pro with monsters, he literally described it as a love letter to kaiju.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, going into like no one is more fit to be doing a giant monster movie than Guillermo Del Toro. So as a fan of the kaiju genre, if you like Godzilla, if you like your classic giant monsters, you know this guy's going to do it justice. And he's also going to do justice to the giant robots. We're talking about a guy he's very nerdy, very dedicated to his vision. I mean, obviously, there probably wasn't a lot of studio interjection with it. He's kind of at that stage where, even though he's a cult director, he can kind of do what he wants.
Yeah.
I get the sense. I mean, he produced this movie as well.
Yeah, and I know James Cameron and David Cronenberg also helped him on this movie. Because I know they shot in Toronto, and David Cronenberg is from Canada. So he helped out with them, finding a location.
Right.
And then I think James Cameron just helped with just the scope of things. Because it's fucking James Cameron. I mean, the dude has
another person who's proven himself for monsters with Avatar, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
And Terminator and stuff like that.
So and also while a CG mastermind, also obviously good with practical effects, as proven by Terminator.
Exactly.
Which was although it was the first CG big CG movie was Terminator 2, but
and definitely one of the first it was the first blockbuster movie with at $100 million plus budget.
Wow, that's kind of beside the point. The point really being Del Toro going into this movie, you knew he was gonna do exactly what he wanted out of the movie.
Yeah,
you knew he was gonna do justice to these genres, and that he was gonna be deliberately paying tribute to them.
Definitely.
As interviews and other stuff with him has also shown. So, tell me what you thought about Pacific Rim.
One word. Actually, 2 words. Fucking epic. Downright fucking epic. Like, everything, it meets expectations and then more. Like, by a long shot. Like, everything about this movie just clicked.
Right.
The fucking battle scenes, It definitely gets to the point quick and fast.
But to clarify, because to you this movie is pretty much perfect.
Yes.
But this movie is perfect by unconventional definitions.
Yes.
We should clarify. Because obviously, I'm all for the idea that everyone's biased, everything's subjective, but there are definitely things in the public consciousness of what means perfect.
Definitely. I definitely think if just a person who is not familiar with the source material that it gets
the influences that this movie has. They're not going to understand it nearly as much as if they understand where this is coming from, the culture it's sort of a part of.
And I feel like someone would just totally pick this movie apart left and right.
If you come at this looking for Oscar bait, you're not gonna have a good time.
This is I feel like this is the epitome of blockbuster fucking movie done right.
Right. And
to the T.
This guy, Guillermo, because like I said, he did Pan's Labyrinth, and if you want Oscar movie, go watch that, because that is the epitome of everything that could possibly be an amazing Oscar movie.
Yeah.
But Del Toro, I feel like he's a guy who, after Pan's Labyrinth, went, I have done a movie that everyone will respect forever. I will always be known as a great director. I will now proceed to do whatever the fuck I want.
Exactly.
With each of his subsequent films. So, the Hellboy movies, if you've seen those, that's way more in line with what Pacific Rim is. Because Hellboy is definitely, cheesy, action-y, more concerned about, the cool comic book nature and fantasy nature of it than it is about the storytelling.
He kind of had, I guess... This could kind of in Hellboy 2, it kind of led up to Pacific Rim,
right?
Where he did, where the scene in the city with the giant, I don't remember,
he did have a sort of a giant monster battle in Hellboy 2. That's what you're getting at, but it wasn't nearly that giant.
No,
it was a big monster, but it was not a giant. It was not a kaiju.
Definitely
this
not.
Is a kaiju movie.
Yeah.
All the monsters are giant, with the exception of the at one scene where they show the leeches that cling to the monsters. So, Pacific Rim. Now, I've been holding back on mentioning this the whole time. I wasn't nearly as into it as you and Victor were.
Right.
I did thoroughly enjoy it.
I kind of figured
that.
But
I did not find it quite as amazing, but that's also because I'm less of Victor's always wanted a giant robot live action movie.
Right.
And that's why I didn't bring him into this podcast, because I knew that the minute I got critical in any way, he was gonna because he's so on this high right now after seeing it, whereas I know you can, take a step back and appreciate what criticisms I might have.
Right.
And not all of it is criticism in a bad way. Some of it is just stuff that I don't think is a problem.
Right.
But it just doesn't appeal to me as much.
Right.
Personally. This movie is kind of a clusterfuck.
It is.
Especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm sure you felt the way I did towards how the first half hour, it really feels like, where is this going?
Yeah.
But the reason for that, I mean, and I think this would improve a lot on a second viewing, where you're not where you're ready. You know what you're getting yourself into, because the movie, more than telling this cohesive, because it does tell a story with, a 3-act structure, I guess.
Yeah.
But the story it's trying to tell is not its main concern.
Yeah.
Its main concern is world building.
Yeah.
And teaching us as much information as it can without being an info dump, basically. So the first, the cold open of the movie tells actually a pretty extensive backstory, because it's not just the invaders came and then we started fighting.
Right.
It actually has and it's totally an anime opening. It is the epitome of the opening monologue of any fucking
that's exactly
anime.
What I was thinking.
If you have ever seen the old Gundam shows where they explain the whole history of the war, and it's the colony dropped and all that, that is what this is.
Yeah.
So it starts off by explaining that there was a giant rift opened up in the Pacific Rim, the literal Pacific Rim.
Yeah. But he also had to mention that they thought, obviously, people are in under the impression that when we see alien life form for the first time, it's going to be from space. Right,
and instead it comes from the ocean.
Yeah,
and it was a dimensional portal. I mean, it's very Lovecraftian in that regard.
Do that, yeah.
Yeah, where it's just some shit came out of nowhere. Which obviously, considering that Del Toro was working on At the Mountains of Madness before he had to cancel that and make...
Were you there when I was explaining this to Victor?
I'm not sure.
This article that I read, going to go completely off topic for a second, it was explaining, because the guy who was interviewing him asked, is Pacific Rim a rebound to, The Hobbit and At the Mountains of Madness? And he was like, sadly, after he departed The Hobbit, he started working on At the Mountains of Madness.
Right.
And the deal that he made with Warner Brothers was that he was going to work on At the Mountains of Madness, but at the same time, if At the Mountains of Madness were to fall through, he would go to Pacific Rim. Because obviously At the Mountains of Madness isn't like, a well-known property.
Yeah.
And people really, it's going to be hard for people to appeal to something like that.
Yeah.
Only if you're like into like horror and Lovecraft and stuff like that. So he obviously like knew like there is a great possibility that At the Mountains of Madness won't get made, and so I'll have this to fall back on.
Right.
So that ended up happening, and yeah.
Yeah. Because At the Mountains of Madness, basically the reason that probably was not going to become a movie is the same reason that it almost didn't get published in the first place.
Right.
At the Mountains of Madness is fucking slow.
Right.
It's real fucking slow. Brando's been trying to read it, and he's just like, I can't handle it. Because it's like constant exposition and just slow build of like learning about the aliens and like why they're there and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And like... It's real slow, but it has to also be kind of high budget for it to work.
Right.
So they couldn't really, and it's already got the thing, so like, which is basically.
Well, I think that was also another problem, is that the budget that they were asking for was close to like $200 million.
God damn.
Yeah.
So yeah, they just couldn't. They couldn't make it with a budget that would be appropriate for its. Being made.
Just because I never read At the Mountains of Madness.
Right.
I know the story.
Yeah. You've seen The Thing. It's the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The Thing is practically an adaptation of At the
But I
Mountains of
know,
Madness.
aren't the monsters like just like way like bigger and like grandiose and stuff like that?
I guess. I mean, I haven't read it either.
Oh, I see.
It's like I said, it's real fucking
it.
slow.
Right.
I can't. I don't really read a lot of Lovecraft because it's hard. It's really slow and really dense with like descriptions of shit. Brando reads it because the words themselves are so ridiculous that he loves reading those words.
Right.
But yeah, moving along. Yeah, he didn't get to do At the Mountains of Madness, but clearly he's a Lovecraft fan, wants to work within the Lovecraft mythos, and this is a very Lovecraftian baseline for a story.
Yeah.
That monsters would show up out of nowhere and just start wrecking shit, and we don't really comprehend why.
Right.
So they start spawning out of this thing in the
what's it called? The rift.
Right, in the trench, and they're just coming out like one after another over time, and they start like wrecking shit, like decimating cities. But the humans quickly figure out we can kill them with regular weaponry.
Yeah, it took them what they said when the first one came, it took them 6 days,
right,
and like countless jets and tanks to kill it.
So they eventually start building giant robots, which of course is cheesy as fuck. Like, how is this a better solution?
Like,
than
yeah, we are
bombs
just
and shit,
the best solution that we have is to build a giant robot.
But that is the number one thing that is the conceit of all giant robots shows is why giant robots? Because they're fucking cool.
Exactly.
Like that's always what it is.
But I mean, what else are you gonna get to combat fucking huge ass monsters destroying your fucking city?
Why is getting punched by a robot somehow better than getting hit by a missile? It really doesn't make a lot of sense. But it doesn't matter. That's the conceit you have to deal with if you're gonna make a giant.
It's gonna
robot
be ridiculous
movie,
regardless.
It's better than they are living machines from a planet called Cybertron. It makes more sense than that.
Like definitely more logical, I think. Yeah.
But so we build robots and we start winning, and that's the interesting thing is that at the start they explained that the humans were winning for a while and like really kicking the monsters' asses like on a consistent basis. And they started celebrating it and like commercializing the robots, and because like only the best people could pilot Jaegers. And so they were like celebrities.
Yeah, but they also had to have a mental connection.
Right. You have to have 2 people to pilot one, and they have to have a mental connection with one another and be able to, and also a connection with the robot, obviously, through the fact that they're, fighting with it. Yeah, so it's so rare to basically find a Jaeger pilot that they all become celebrities, they all become commercialized and stuff. But then the kaiju start getting stronger and start kicking their asses.
Yeah, it's also good to mention that the kaiju are categorized.
Right, they're
almost like a hurricane or like a tornado.
Yeah, that's obviously what it's based on.
Yeah.
They even make a hurricane metaphor in there. So they have a hurricane classification system for kaiju, and I think it was the first level 3 actually that wipes out the main character's brother, because the main character and his brother were pilots. In the cold open, the brother gets killed, which of course scars the main character, and he's like, I don't want to fight anymore, kind of thing. And that's when the title of battle turns, because the kaiju start kicking the Jaegers' asses again. But they keep building more new Jaegers, trying to improve. But it reaches a point 5 years later, after the cold open, that the government, the world government, who's all banded together, of course.
Yeah, they pretty much through all of their differences and rivalries aside.
I mean, again, it's so classic.
Do you really think?
Macross did that's what it's really like. It's the opening of Macross, which is where the Zentradi attack, and because it was the bad guys had one of their ships had landed on Earth, and then they come to attack. And it leads to a war where all of the nations bound together, and they or something like that. I don't remember it exactly, but there was a world government in Macross for a while. But
I think it also seems logical within this world to happen, because there's fucking huge ass monsters destroying the fucking I
mean, that's always the reasoning, is we band together against a common enemy. Yeah. And this is definitely one of those stories where we band together against a common enemy. So. Yeah, the common enemy in this case being the kaiju, which are called kaiju, may I reiterate, which I still love.
Yes, they say the word kaiju
constantly.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're fighting the kaiju. The Jaegers are starting to get better again, but the government's starting to lose hope in the in the Jaeger operation, because they've been losing Jaegers left and right. They think they should build a giant wall. So, the main character, who is retired from giant robot piloting, is working on building this giant wall. And it's hilarious, because you're thinking that there's going to be this government tension where they want to fund the wall, but the others want to fund the robots. And then, of course, eventually the wall's going to break. But it happens, immediately.
Yeah. That kind of threw me off, how quick all of that happened.
Right.
Because, as soon as, he gets, he goes back and joins them.
Yeah.
We hear, fucking
a kaiju broke through the wall.
Broke through the fucking wall.
Because it literally, the government tells the black guy who runs, what's his name? Do you remember? Did they even say his name?
Yeah, I think it's Marshall.
Right. So Marshall is the leader of the Jaeger program, and the government's like, we'll let you move all the Jaegers to Hong Kong and set up a thing there and try your hardest, but we're gonna dedicate the rest of our funds to the wall. We're giving you 8 months or whatever to fight, and we're gonna dedicate the money to the wall. But the wall gets broken through, right after that scene.
Yeah.
Right after they recruit the main character to come back. And the thing about this movie is that, and this is the thing that kind of bothers me, but not really, because I get that it's an engine for action. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be an excuse to have giant robots fight giant monsters and have all this, exposition about them. But it's the main character comes back just because, Marshall tells him, he's like, would you rather die fighting or die working on the wall, or die in battle? And he's like, well, shit, I guess I'd rather die in battle.
I mean, he doesn't, explicitly, he doesn't, say it, but you can, it's implied that, this dude is not gonna fucking, he's gonna die. He wants to fight, these fucking monsters. He doesn't want to fucking be, working on this big-ass wall.
But there was, it was well, if that's the way he felt, why did he go to work on this? But he was like, I can't pilot a Jaeger again. And the guy's like, well, you're gonna. And he's like, well, all right. That's kind of the level that the character development happens on throughout the movie. Yeah. It's very much but I don't wanna, but you gotta. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
Kind of how it works. There's no moment of realization. He doesn't see someone get crushed by a kaiju and remember why he has to fight. The guy's just well, you should come back because we're all gonna die. And he's like, well, I guess.
And that's the thing.
If I'm the last hope for humanity,
because he doesn't even think about his brother at that point. When his brother dies, he just, like you said, he just kind of goes along with it.
Yeah, he just kind of gets strung along. So. And of course, when he goes to the base, he meets this Asian chick, and it's instant, yes, I like this Asian chick.
She's fucking hot.
But what's cool about the movie, and this is so anime, is that even though they obviously, love each other, it's never played as a relationship.
No.
It's always totally platonic.
Yeah.
They don't flirt. They don't, they don't kiss at any point.
Though the scene when they're like when she's looking at him,
right.
Like she's in her room and he's in his room.
Yeah, and she's like staring at him.
That completely reminded me of, if you remember Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
I have not seen it.
Well, there's a scene where they're like going to bed. And like they're both like they're like saying like, oh, we're gonna just gonna go to sleep because they're pissed off at each other. But they're obviously like, they obviously want each other, and they're both like, it goes back and forth between like their rooms of like, because Indiana Jones has like, a sidekick, and he's just like, just complaining about her. And then in her room, she doesn't have anyone, but she's just like talking to herself, saying like, just all these bad things.
I mean, it's very classic, like that. But the funny thing is that both of them completely want each other the whole movie.
Yeah.
There's no point where they're like,
I was waiting for like, when are they gonna like just kiss?
Right.
But I guess like I've kind of felt like
it really was a platonic relationship.
Yeah.
Like,
but I felt like that would have been the easy route to go, though.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
in that relationship.
It would have felt just because, I mean, the whole movie is very, it's very Hollywood action movie without being, where it's not by the. I don't want to say it's not by the numbers, because obviously it's clearly trying to be a certain
There
thing.
are just certain aspects that don't go by the typical, I guess, formula or whatever.
I mean, let's say it's a formula movie, but not because a Hollywood exec wants it to be a formula movie, but because he wants it to be a formula. Del Toro does,
Yeah.
And the formula is not Hollywood blockbuster; it's monster movie, And even though like romance is not alien to those movies, it's very Japanese, very stoic. You know, Japanese like relationships in movies are often like that, where it's just this very stoic. They love each other, but they don't kiss. They don't do anything.
It's almost like they don't show. They're not like intimate or anything.
Right,
like that.
exactly. They're close on like a. They love each other, but it's not. Let's say it's not.
Maybe like off screen.
No, what's the word I'm looking for? The word for like, it's not a physical attraction. It's more of a like there's hints that they might be physically attracted to each other, but it doesn't really feel like that's the reason. They're more like it's like true love.
Exactly.
Like they legitimately have a connection.
I mean, well, that's what I'm saying. Like that, they as soon as they fucking met, they knew that they had a mental connection with each other. That
and so they he's trying to find a candidate to be his partner for the Jaeger fighting, and he's like fighting all these people. And it's interesting because and this was one of the coolest like trend bucking, I thought, because in most movies like this, he'd be going, none of these people are fit to be my partner. I can't have another partner after my brother. That kind of thing. He's not like that. She is.
Right.
She's the one who's like, none of these people are good enough to be his partner.
Right.
He was like, I don't care. He just thought he was going to be fucking going on basically a suicide mission to go fucking kill some monsters. He was like, I just got to do what I got to do. Let me have whoever. But because she's the one who's going, no, you can't, like, none of these people are good enough. And he's like, well, then you fucking step up.
Right.
And then he fights her, and he's like, okay, this bitch is, like, way better than all those guys. Yeah. Why can't I take her?
And that's when he realizes, that
that they obviously have a connection. And it's interesting, because what this movie does, and I'm the kind of person who's very open to accepting a story's conceits. Like, it's excuses, but like in a kind way of putting it, where excuses implies negative.
Right.
Conceit is like, the conceit of this movie is that when you connect with someone, it's a neural connection where you share all their memories. You're basically inside their head. And this one line of dialogue sells the whole thing for me. And it's when, towards the end, because there's this, basically the guy who's like the real, like the badass, like the ace pilot.
Yeah.
He's kind of a dick, but he pilots with his dad.
Yeah.
And, towards the end, he's gonna have to, like, the dad got injured in one of the fights, so the son has to go out with Marshall to like the final battle, and the two of them like walk up to each other, and the dad's like, I know when you're mind melding with someone, you feel like you never have anything to talk about because you understand each other so well. But he's like, and the kid's like, I know, Dad, I've always known. They like hug it out or whatever. But that totally sold me on why it didn't matter that the main characters have like no chemistry together.
Exactly, because they already know each other.
Right, exactly.
Inside and out.
So they don't need to like flirt and have all this, this stuff because
there didn't need to be that much character development.
Right. And I like that conceit. I'm okay with it. I know that for us as viewers, it means we're not going to care as much about the characters, but it sells. Because in a lot of movies like this, you'd be going, why? Why are they together? Why?
Right,
what do they have to... Because, so many movies, the main guy and the main girl have no chemistry. They don't seem like they'd be a healthy couple. Why are they in love with... Like the Transformers movies. Why the fuck is he with that chick? Like, that couple is horrible, right?
It made absolutely no sense at all.
For either of them. Because both of them are terrible people. So why would they be in a relationship? In this movie... You don't really feel like they have chemistry, but neither one of them's bad. They're both like total do-gooders. The main guy's like self-sacrificing. The chick's they're Japanese practically.
Yeah.
The guy's not Japanese, but he can speak Japanese as far as I'm concerned. And they are a Japanese couple, right?
Right.
So yeah, they're just like very sort of humble couple together, but. They get into the Jaeger. I mean, they establish early on, they think they have a connection. The main character's like, I know she can fight with me. And then they get into a Jaeger to do a test run, and they mind meld with one another. And after that point, there's really nothing left for them to say to each other because they totally understand each other's mind now. And the movie is very aware of this.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, try to develop their relationship really any further than that. No. At that point, they're connected. It's over with. It doesn't even, like, the two of them's relationship, if you can even call it that, because it's mostly about them wanting to pilot the Jaeger together.
Yeah.
But that's only a plot point for the first half. The second half is just like, they get it now. They know they're a couple, so they're like, let's do this,
Right.
The tension is mostly because of the fact that she can't really pilot yet because... And this is the one thing that did bother me about the movie. The first time they do a test run, she fucks up.
Right.
She gets lost in her memory, and she can't do it. So the whole tension was, we can't let them pilot the robot because she's not ready yet, but no one else is good enough to do it with her. But then when they finally, like, they lose two robots, they're like, fuck, what are we going to do?
Right.
We got to send them out.
Right.
But there's no resolution of that conflict.
Right.
She doesn't have like another episode and then he pulls her back or something.
Cause that's like
they just fucking go,
Right. That's almost how I felt like I'm like, shouldn't there be like some kind of like conflict at this point?
Yeah, that was the only moment that was like really a negative to the film. Like other stuff is stuff that is like me nitpicking, but this is the one thing where I was like, well, why? Why does she no longer have that was a big issue. That's the whole reason they were grounded, and now she's just fine.
Right.
I mean, he did have like a couple lines of dialogue where there was like, you gotta, but it was like the same shit he'd already been saying.
Right.
Where it's like, the mind meld is difficult. I shouldn't have
pretty much just like reassuring. Like.
Right. And then she just kind of gets it, which I guess it's not that bad, but at the same time, it could have been.
But that's I think that's the thing. It's like. She knows what to expect next time around.
Right. They just didn't reiterate that enough.
Right.
There could have been something in there to like really make you feel like, okay, she's ready now. Where they didn't do that.
Right.
They just kind of were ready now.
I mean, they kind of went back to it, I guess, when spoilers when.
Oh, now you're bringing up spoilers. We've been spoilers the whole time.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna put like a spoiler warning in the title of the video, so like.
But where it's revealed that that her and Marshall, like Marshall saved her when she was a little kid,
right?
And they kind of like they didn't really go in depth with it, but they kind of. We're.
I mean, they're explaining why he doesn't want to let her go. She, is worried about him, but yeah, it still didn't really resolve the fact that she was not ready to pilot the robot, and then she was.
I guess I kind of took it as like I guess learn from your experiences, even though it did it like really fucking quick.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not inexcusable. It just would have been nice. Would have been nice to have something, just one 1 minute scene of her like starting to blank out, and she's like, "No, I got this." I figured it out now, and then you'd be like, "Oh, okay, they're ready to go." There was none of that.
Right.
On to the action. So this is the point, because the way I saw it, if this movie had amazing battles, it wouldn't matter what the rest of the movie was.
Right.
And it does have pretty fucking awesome battles.
Yeah, like it's pretty much like after that point. With like her like trying to resolve these issues, it's pretty much just like
action
on action the entire way through.
Because there is, let's say, okay, the first action scene is the giant robot versus the one in the water. This is like this is a deep sea battle where they're like the water's up to their chest. You
Yeah.
know? So he's like low mobility, giant robot versus giant monster. The monster is very like Godzilla-esque at the beginning. You know? I think it was the shark head one. And it's just like a brawl, you know. It's like he's punching the monster. He's trying to protect like a ship, but that didn't really play a major role in the fight. And I thought it was cool, but the problem, and this is the biggest problem I have, was that I feel like anime kind of does it better. Just because when it comes to the big hits, the movie doesn't sell them as well as I want it to.
I just don't think that, you know, just a live action movie can put emphasis on it like an anime can.
Yeah, it's just. Because I mean, I've always felt that, you know, like a giant robot movie will never be as cool in live action as it will be in anime, but I kind of favor the faster robots.
Right.
So that's probably part of why. You know,
I think
this movie is going for but at the same time, a show that does it extremely well with slow robots is Big O.
Right.
Because in Big O, when a robot punches a monster, you feel it like
I think that's what he was kind of going for, just like these mechanical fucking, you know, these big clunky mechanical, you know, robots.
I mean,
that when it hits something, you fucking just feel that.
But I felt like it wasn't. I didn't feel it enough. You know, that was the biggest letdown for me in the combat was just that there were some hits that were like, fuck yeah,
right.
But there were a lot of it was like, you know, they'd punch the monster. It just kind of looked like punching a monster.
Right,
you know, it looked like a.
I don't know. I guess that kind of worked for me more than you, because like.
I just wanted to see him punch a monster. And it's like, you know, like a whole like. You know, falls back and then reels in, like that kind of like really hard hitting, and there was some of that, but like that first fight, it just kind of felt like he was just like, you know, punching the monster around and shit, and there was also a lot of rain in like all the fights, which kind of like that first fight was the most obscured, and I think it was probably trying to be so that it would leave some mystery for later on. Right. It's like the later fights would be more.
Well, I think you know, just why that fight scene in particular wasn't like you know. Epic like the other ones. It's just because I think like I just think that they were not expecting that kaiju to be that strong and put up that much of a fight.
I mean,
they weren't taking it seriously.
It definitely is a cool moment when the tide turns in the battle. Like they think they've killed it easily, and then it comes back and it just fucking rips that shit to
I was
shreds.
Like, oh my god.
Yeah, the coolest moments are actually when the kaiju attack.
Right.
Like when the robots attack, like I said, they don't sell the hits quite enough. And it's not as much on the part of the robot, but it's on the part of the kaiju where they just kind of get hit and they're just like, you know.
Right.
It kind of looks like guys in costumes punching each other, you know? Like it's very like Power Rangers in that regard, which is not all bad, but I guess in a way I wish it was cheesier. Like, I wish there was sparks flying off and stuff like that. You know, like the real cheesy effects. And this movie does try to ground itself in Hollywood realism to an extent.
Right.
It doesn't want people going, okay, you know.
Well,
it's not like
I'm sure, like, the studio's like, you can make it cheesy.
Right.
You just can't make it
a B movie. It can't be. And so I guess part of me wanted it to be a B movie or an anime where it would like really like he'd punch a monster and it'd be like this like big crazy ridiculous moment and you know because the movie comes so close to being that but isn't, and I just kind of wished it was, but I totally understand why it's not, you know, and I can still appreciate what we do get, you know, and it is, like I said, it's totally awesome when the monsters attack because they just like rip shit to shreds, tear it up, you know, they're like very visceral creatures, and I like that. Yeah, that first fight scene wasn't as cool, but it wasn't really meant to be, but and then there's sort of an action scene between, like the fighting scenes, obviously, when he's testing the candidates. He fights the Asian girl. Did we name, what was her name again? Mako Mori. Yeah, he fights Mako Mori, and she was insanely hot in that scene. That's most of what I got out of it. I was like I can't wait for Marcus to watch that movie. He's gonna fucking cream a load of that. He loves soft-spoken Asian chicks who can fight. That's like his thing. So when he sees this movie, he's gonna be like,
because I've seen her. She was in another movie called The Brothers Bloom. And it's kind of like a caper movie where she doesn't speak at all.
I see.
She has no speaking part at all, even though she's like pretty much like a main character. She pretty much like her and Mark Ruffalo. the guy who played the Hulk in the Avengers,
right?
He's in the movie. They pretty much have just like this unspoken chemistry and stuff like that. And, which he'll like say something to her and she'll like get it, and then like back and forth and stuff.
I wonder
like
if that's
that.
how she got that role. Was supposed to have an unspoken chemistry with the main character,
right?
Because
maybe.
they basically do. I mean, they don't have a on-screen chemistry,
right?
But in the context of the story, that's the way that.
And I mean, it's obvious that she doesn't speak English too well,
right?
So
yeah, they speak Japanese at a few parts in the movie with subtitles.
Because I felt like that was kind of like a ballsy move on Del Toro's part to bring in.
I mean, they didn't do it a lot. It wasn't like fucking Tarantino having like whole fucking Japanese segments.
I mean, I know, but still, to bring in like to put an Asian actor,
right,
who doesn't speak English that well as like a main character in an American movie,
Yeah. So there's Japanese lines, obviously for the sake of weebness,
right?
I mean, there's other languages too, which is very much a giant robot thing to do, because in spite of the fact that it's Japanese, most giant robot shows involve like the whole world,
right?
Like the robots are called Jaegers. It's a German word, and having German giant robots is a very Japanese thing to do. They usually have American and German shit shit in their movies,
right?
One thing
even in like certain Godzilla movies, there are like American actors in Godzilla movies.
I'll get into a little bit because we're going to talk about the influences in like its own section, I guess. We're still kind of going through the movie bit by bit right now. So one of the coolest things that we haven't brought up yet is like early on, because the movie is very cheesy, and it doesn't let you on at first to how cheesy it's going to be. But when you first start to get an inkling for it, it's when they introduce the scientists.
Oh, yes.
And these guys are, like, way over the top scientist characters, they're classic.
I definitely felt like as like in an anime setting. And they're kind of like those the goofy scientists.
They're the I mean, very Go Nagai. Is how I would describe them.
Like comedic relief.
Yeah, because Go Nagai's scientists are always like these crazy, hilarious, but at the same time like genius and insane and badass, but also funny kind of characters, and that's what they're kind of going for. So it's two guys. One of them is the dude from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and the other one I have no idea. But they're the Always Sunny guy. He's like the hyperactive, like sort of like nerdy dude bro guy. He's like a nerd, but he's got tattoos and everything.
Tattoos of different kaiju on his arms.
He's a huge kaiju fanboy, and he's like part of the research and development team studying kaiju. And then the other guy is the like uptight, like British or whatever he was supposed to be from.
I think it was German.
The uptight German scientist, and they're both like way shorter than everyone else in the cast. You noticed that? Like I was like, oh my god, they're like this tiny, scrawny scientist guys. And they both hate each other, and they're both so corny, and I loved it. They were like my favorite, at the beginning. I was like, these guys have brought life to this movie. Because to get, to change gears a little bit, the thing that was bothering me through the early part of the movie was that it didn't have a lot of heart at first. I felt. Compared to because Hellboy 2 has tons of heart.
Definitely.
That movie is all about heart. More than anything, it's really about like the sentimentality and the emotions of the creators and the characters. It's a very emotional movie. And the early segment of Pacific Rim feels like it's more concerned with just like the act of being a giant monster movie, and not as much about being like this heartfelt, emotional sort of tale. But those guys start to give it some heart when you get the scientists, and you really start to feel like, all right, now he's like really paying homage to these old movies, that he's involving the cheesy scientists.
Because the setup with like a lot of Godzilla movies is that it was kind of boring in the beginning. Which this
Yeah, you can't deny we're holding Pacific Rim to a high standard because it is expected to be a high budget thing, and it sort of. It is the beast it worships, if I want to put it in Death Grip's terms. It definitely is like a Godzilla movie, It's... I don't even want to say it, because if you're the kind of person who likes Godzilla, you're ready for this stuff.
Right.
And if you go in with, like, unrealistic expectations of how much better it should be than a Godzilla movie, you'll be disappointed.
Yeah.
But if you think of it as, like if you watch it like it's just another Godzilla movie, it's a really badass Godzilla movie, But it definitely has that element of being sort of a slow burn and sort of cheesy, even though it obviously knows it's cheesy, it's kind of like Godzilla where it is cheesy, undeniably. Like Godzilla movies, as much as you love them, you go into them going, "Wow, this is like fucking cheesy."
I like how they call it the area where they held all the robots, the Shatterdome.
Did they?
Yeah,
the Shatterdome.
Yeah. You didn't notice that?
I don't know what it's a reference to.
I don't know. I just thought it was kind of hilarious. It's like,
what was the name of the robo? Something Gypsy?
Oh, Gypsy Danger.
Yeah, Gypsy Danger. Holy fuck! What a name for a robot.
And then the Chinese one was Crimson Typhoon, and
Gypsy Danger.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like ultimate B movie name.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, like the giant robots definitely pay homage to older stuff. The Chinese one has 3 arms because it's piloted by 3 guys.
Which
you've got
that was like probably like the only real thing that bothered me the most. Like
it just gets owned immediately.
Well, yeah, and you don't get to see the third guy. Like I thought it would have been cool if they had like showed like all 3 of them like fucking piloting this because they had three guys.
Right. They were all 3 piloting it.
Yeah, but it didn't show it.
They didn't really show much of that robot.
Yeah.
It kind of, when they get into the big battle, because they kind of build up that there's going to be this big battle because of the fact that the ace pilot and his dad are going to carry this nuclear bomb to the rift, and their expectation is that they're going to like get the rift as it opens and they're going to blow it up because they're going to throw a nuclear bomb into it, and because it's a nuclear rift it should explode. I don't know why they didn't figure this out earlier, but
well, no, I think they said they tried to do it before, but it never worked.
Yeah, but this time for some reason they thought it would.
Well, no, because they realized that the only way to do that is for a kaiju to enter in.
But they didn't figure that part out till the end. Like, I don't know what they thought they were going to do when they... Because I don't remember what the scientists, like, explained for why they had to go launch this nuke in there, like, why it was going to work. But they thought it was going to work.
I guess, yeah, so, I don't know, I guess...
Yeah, I really don't remember what the context was. But they had the ace pilot carrying the bomb, and then there was the Chinese robot, which is piloted by 3 guys, and it has 3 arms. And then there's the Russian robot, which is these... Of course, the Russian pilots are, like, these... It's like a guy and his wife, I guess, and they're these fucking huge, hulking people.
Yeah, and it looked like one of the like the like a Chernobyl like stack house or something.
Right. It was definitely. And
it was supposed to be just
Russian,
like fucking really like brutish and stuff.
It was extremely G Gundam in that regard, where it was like each one is like representative of where it's from, and the pilots are like sort of cheesy caricatures. They didn't do like a lot with them. Like in fact, the Chinese guys never even get to talk.
No.
The Russians get like 2 lines, and the Chinese robot, because they go out and they get attacked by 2 kaiju, and the Chinese robot just gets annihilated like immediately. He barely even gets to fight, and the Russian one puts up a bit of a fight and then gets destroyed.
that one gets fucked up more than the fucking the Chinese
gets
one.
Wrecked. And that was like the coolest kaiju scene. Was they were just tearing these fucking robots to shreds.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Yeah. And then the Australian one, they were getting ready to fucking go head to head with this one, and then it just lets out like this. It was like a electrical wave,
right?
Or just shuts down like all electrical devices,
right? And so then the reason that Gypsy Danger can still fight is because it's nuclear powered, not electrically powered, because it's like an old model of a robot.
But we should also note that at this time, they didn't allow them to go out just because of the events that happened.
Exactly, and they didn't know that there was going to be an electrical surge from one of the monsters. Yeah. But the monsters have been evolving and learning because of, they constantly evolve to fight the Jaegers, and it did and I was wondering, I was like, how does that make sense if they keep dying? How are they evolving? But then of course it turns out that they're all clones, and they're part of a hive mind,
right? Which
the scientist guy finds out by mind melding with a giant robot using the same technology that they used to mind meld with the Jaeger. I meant with the kaiju.
Right.
He mind melds with the kaiju by using like part of its brain, and he figures out that they are all a hive mind, and they're being cloned and sent here from another dimension to annihilate the Earth. They're literally trying to kill everyone on Earth,
and so they can
take over our dimension.
Yeah.
So
it's also revealed that we were terraforming the planet for them.
Apparently, the first time the giant monsters showed up, they annihilated the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So these monsters have been here before. They killed the dinosaurs, but when they showed up, the planet was not fit for them to come and take over. But we polluted the Earth so badly that the monsters now are unable to inhabit it. And of course, it's like a throwaway line.
Yeah.
But it's so classic.
Yeah.
So classic to throw in some kind of like, you know, ham-fisted environmentalist message in there. Just like to take pot shots. Like, it had to be there, you know?
Yeah.
It's almost as if they found every explanation for monsters to invade Earth and put them all in, you know? Like the Godzilla, like, environmentalist messages and shit. And,
definitely.
You know, the fact that there's, like, nuclear and electric, you know, dichotomy going on. All of that's very important to the history of giant robots and giant monsters. So, yeah, in the big battle, the power gets shut off, but then they say, fuck it, send out the Jaeger, which they weren't going to send out because Mako couldn't pilot. But now she can, and this is the one kind of cop-out in the movie, because it does kind of ride on the idea that, like, they couldn't pilot, and that's why they weren't sent. But then they get sent, and they easily can do it, and there's no, like, resolution of the fact that Mako couldn't pilot before, and now she can. So yeah, still kind of bothers me dramatically, but not I mean like in a dramatic, like in a sense of the drama of the movie.
Right.
That should have been a thing, but they just kind of go out and they're like, well, we're here now, so they start beating up the kaiju and shit, and it was interesting what they did to split up the two kaiju, because one of them goes into town and starts looking for the scientist guy because he had mind melded with the kaiju.
Right. Yeah.
So one of them goes into the city, and that gives the Jaeger the opportunity to fight the other one one-on-one.
Right.
Instead of having to take on both, which is obviously why they did that. Because they were like, the kaiju is looking for the doctor. That was another thing that they never really explained why it was looking for him.
No, because their minds linked. Because remember he was saying...
Right, but why did that mean it wanted him?
What did it want him to kill him?
Just to kill him because he has
the information.
Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
He was saying that their memories bridged together.
So the kaiju comes looking for him, and of course at that point, so that guy, he wants a live kaiju, or he wants a full kaiju brain so he can link with it again and learn more information. So he goes to the black market, and this is where we meet Ron Perlman.
Yes,
and Ron Perlman,
which by the way, his character's name is Hannibal Chow.
Which he made himself. He named himself after his favorite fictional character and his second favorite.
No, not
Chinese
his favorite.
restaurant.
His favorite historical character.
And his favorite Chinese restaurant. Second favorite Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
But he's like an over-the-top classic pulp character running the kaiju parts selling market in Hong Kong. And I gotta say, out of all the world-building elements, that was by far the coolest.
Yeah.
Was because you do wonder, what do they do with these kaiju bodies and stuff? And so basically, it turns out that what's his name? The chief. I keep forgetting his name.
Oh.
The
Marshall.
Marshall. He struck a deal with this guy where he said, like, you give me all these like supplies.
Oh, because they were desperate at this point in time.
And so he said, you give me supplies and I'll let you have whatever you want from the kaiju body parts. So this guy's selling stuff because apparently kaiju are full of all kinds of like, you know, different chemicals and stuff that are valuable. So he sells off like all their parts. And he's like, of course, this fucking over the top cheesy like 90s pulp character, or 80s pulp character rather.
Right.
And his dialogue with the scientist dude is fucking perfect.
I know.
It's total classic cheesy kaiju movie stuff, because both of them will sit there and explain stuff to one another for the audience's sake. And like he says, we both know that the kaiju have two brains, just like dinosaurs, because they're so big that they need two to control their body. And the guy's like, I know that, but the brains aren't worth anything, as you know. We don't keep those.
Just like hitting you over the head with it.
Right. It was obviously on purpose.
Yeah.
Obviously on purpose that they did that during those. And it's just when those two talk.
Yeah.
Like, they brought him in to be that guy.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, it is interesting that it develops this sort of cult. Because, like, it's literally a town that's built over the skeleton of a kaiju. Yeah. Which was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was really
That was
cool.
One of those classic Del Toro moments where you go, why couldn't there have been a whole movie there?
Right.
Just like the Hellboy 2 scene where you're like, I want, like, an extensive backstory.
Dude, that's exactly what I thought.
City.
Like in certain parts, I was like, dude, this is exactly like the monster city in Hellboy 2. I was like,
why can't we get a whole movie there?
Right.
You know, but
that just explores this whole entire fucking just
right, this
city.
subculture. Like I want a Blade Runner set there.
Yeah,
you know?
seriously.
But yeah, so we get this guy, and he wants to try to find a kaiju, and of course the fucking his character, what's his name again?
Hannibal Chow.
Right, Hannibal Chow immediately like realizes if you mind linked with the monster, they're gonna want to come kill you. Like I don't know how he got to that conclusion, but he's like, think about how the Jaegers do the thing, and then that's like, and it was just like classic like guy who knows way too much for no reason. But he was like, we're getting the fuck out of here. You're on your own, right? So the monster comes into town looking for him, and right before it eats the scientist is when, of course, the Jaeger shows up to like combat it. Like right when that guy's about to die, the Jaeger comes in to fight.
When we'll get into this later, but when it appears, it's almost like some kind of like gecko-ish kind of monster. It's kind of just like really like quickly, fast paced, kind of like roaming around the town.
Yeah, it was definitely the fastest monster that had appeared so far, and I believe they kept saying that they were getting faster and faster because each wave was like better monsters, where they were developing new, like they were better suited to fight the Jaegers because they were constantly feeding information back to the hive mind, so it was learning and it would produce more and more stronger monsters, more ready to fight them. All of it genius conceits, by the way.
Yeah,
these are genius like excuses for this shit,
right?
For it to make sense, as long as you get past the fact that it's another dimension, and for some reason there's monsters trying to kill the Earth, and we built robots for some reason. Those are the only like two things you really have to like grip onto, and if you can buy those two things, the rest of it sells itself. Right. It's very well done in that regard, and you have to buy the cheesy acting.
Well, of course.
But yeah, like so this big fight happens. One of my favorite scenes actually in terms of like characters doing something great is after the electrical shortage, because the monster's like just kind of prowling around the ace pilot mech before the gypsy shows up, and the two guys, like the father and son who are supposed to be piloting it, they're like, our power's out, what are we gonna do? And the monster like kind of thinks it's dead or something, like it doesn't attack because it kind of thinks it's already won.
Right.
And he goes, the son's like, we got to get out of here. The dad goes, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna grab those flare guns and do something really stupid.
Right.
So they grab the flare guns, get out on top of the mech, and shoot the monster in the eyes with the flare guns. That was fucking awesome.
That was.
And they don't even get killed there. So
I know. I was like,
great.
oh my god, they are about to fucking die.
And then Gypsy Danger shows up and fights them. The monster. This whole fight was like in shallow water, so you could see a lot more of the mechs, and this fight leads Gypsy Danger onto shore, where he's fighting it with. This is by far the coolest fight scene. Yeah. This is where shit picks up. The monster throws him into town. They're fucking duking it out. The hits are way heavier.
Yeah.
It's starting to get real. He picks up like cargo loads for ships and like uses it as like brass knuckles, basically, like punching the monster with it and shit. We get a lot of those shots that you will never see in a Transformers movie because they're not CG.
Exactly.
When he smashes the crates against the monster's face, you would never see that in Transformers.
Definitely
because
not.
it was too up close and too like it didn't hide anything. You know? It wasn't trying to conceal bad CG because it wasn't CG.
Right.
Even though Transformers is known for the fact that most of the confusion... I shouldn't use that as an example because most of the confusion in Transformers is Michael Bay's fault and not the animator's fault. Because Transformers does have the highest tech, like, CG ever.
Right.
Like that movie has legit CG. Michael Bay's camera work just makes it unseeable. But most movies that use CG try to obscure it with the camera work or by making it really dark or.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's also, you should also say that the later half of the movie is predominantly CG and it looks good.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it is CG though, and we don't know. Because Del Toro is like a master of combining CG and practical effects,
regardless, it looked fantastic.
Like Hellboy 2, obviously there had to have been CG used when he fights the giant flower thing, but at the same time, it really doesn't seem like it.
Right.
There's obviously, it's a mixture of the two, of CG and practical effects, and this movie is definitely doing that. The Jaegers we know were built, they were made. There are Jaegers, and they actually had they used them as like giant puppets, And obviously the same with the monsters. You can clearly tell are like suits because like when he punches it, it's kind of like flabby.
Right.
You know, it's got some of that like old monster movie cheese where like they get hit and they're kind of like, you know, like that like Power Rangers sort of monster feeling. But at the same time, everything looks brilliant and spot on.
Yeah.
And every shot is gorgeous, you know, and. Yeah, that fight scene is where stuff gets really cool, and then when he fights the gecko, that's badass. He has a ship that he uses as a sword, and the scene where he's dragging the ship along the ground like a club was fucking gorgeous.
Yeah,
and then he just beats this monster over the face with a fucking battleship, and gets into a fight with it, and you know you figure out that the machine has an arm cannon, which when he's like getting attacked by the monster, he's like empties his whole clip into it. Is badass. He has a blade. There's so many
like
comes out of his head.
They're just like there are so many money shots in this fight scene.
And it plays by the 70s robot rules of the weapons don't need to be told to you. They just kind of show up.
Exactly.
In battle. At some point, they go, "Oh, but we have a sword."
Yeah, she was like,
you know,
"Well, we got this." And I was like, "Oh shit!"
Before it showed the sword, as soon as she said, "There's one other option," I said, "Fucking sword!" Like I literally said it out loud, and then it shows the sword button, and I was like, "Yup, I was ready for that." So the fight with the gecko monster is by far the coolest because he beats it up with the boat, and then the monster gets pissed, and it turns out it has wings, and it grabs the Jaeger, and it's just slamming it into buildings. That was fucking brutal.
That was.
And then flies it up into space, or like into the atmosphere, and they're like, "We're losing oxygen and shit." And then she gets out the blade arm, and the fucking money shot of the movie, especially for Victor, she says in Japanese, like, "For my family."
Exactly, dude.
And
I was
then
like,
cuts the fucking monster in half with the blade. And of course, it's like big money shot cut in half. And then the Jaeger plummets down to earth, like crash lands, and then it gets up and it's like, da, 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 you know, like big, like, fuck yeah, it survived a moment. So, you know, that's the end of that fight, which is, even though the final fight is super cool, that was the big fight, I'd say. The biggest fight in the movie was that one. Some more drama happens. We lead up to the final confrontation. The scientist guy finally gets to mind meld with a monster, because it turns out the monster that died in the city was pregnant.
Yes.
And they were trying to like excavate its brain, and it turns out that there was a baby inside of it, and the baby comes charging out, but then gets strangled by its own umbilical cord and like dies, right? And fucking the best scene, the Hannibal Chow is like, you know, he's all like, "Yeah, man, I wasn't scared," and shit. He like stabs the monster with his knife, and he's like, "Fucking thing," and then it just all of a sudden gets up and eats him. And it was like the biggest, like, because they had to have a shock in there, and that was the one. It was just like boom, and you're like, "Fuck!"
I know. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, and completely just fucking caught me off guard.
So it eats Hannibal Chow, then gets re-strangled, and finally dies.
Yeah.
It was obviously like, it was cheesy but awesome. Right. It was like the best kind of cheesy.
Right.
And then the scientist guys mind meld with the monster. They learn about what's really going on, that it's actually been sending out these waves of like the early monsters were just like basically like test runs to clear the earth, and then the real shit would come through, so they need to end this now,
right?
You know, and they find out that the only way to go through this rift is with the monster's DNA,
right?
So they're gonna have to carry a kaiju into the rift,
because I guess how they pretty much explain it is like the monsters are like a barcode. You know, pretty much how like you check out.
He literally says it's a barcode for a grocery store.
Yeah,
like,
I thought that was the
best cheesy explanation possible.
Oh, man.
But yeah. So they go into the final battle. Like they get informed of that, and the final battle is actually underwater. The whole thing takes place down near the trench, which was pretty fucking cool location for a fight.
And when you think about it, I mean, they kind of had like a battle in air,
right,
on land. And now in the final battle scene in the water.
Right. And it's cool. You never get like fully underwater giant
robot
scenes,
not.
You know. So that was really cool. And the monsters, of course, are higher mobility because they're down there, and they're like the fastest monsters yet. So they're like totally giving them the runaround. And there's 3 of them this time. But it was a fucking was a pretty cool battle, and we get what was my favorite money shot in the movie, because one of the monsters comes like basically the Jaeger throws off one monster and it's got its sword out, and then the other one's like swimming right towards it, and it does the classic duck down, sword up, cut the monster in half lengthwise. And it should be mentioned, there were more than one moment in this movie where it did the anime triple shot.
Right.
Where it showed the same shot from 3 different angles.
Right.
And that is classic anime. Like, almost every anime does that.
Right.
Every Giant Robot anime has the triple shot. It's
I know
absolute. It's
definitely prevalent in, like, Mazinger.
Right.
Like
especially, like, 70s anime constantly did it. The triple shot is classic. Me and Donson laugh every time it happens because it's so, like, pervasive.
Right.
And they did the triple shot, like, several times in the movie, and they give you the good old, like, 12 different angles shot on him cutting the monster in half. But the real money was not just that he cuts it in half, but he kind of strikes a pose afterwards that is clearly a reference to Mobile Suit Gundam. Because in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, the most iconic shot, and this is copied in, like, every Gundam series.
Are you talking about the one where
where he cuts because in the first battle in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, Amuro when he first pulls out the blade sword, he pulls it out, the enemy's jumping at him, and he cuts it in half and takes this pose, and the robot explodes in the background behind him, and that became, like, the poster shot.
Right.
You know, like, when you think Gundam, you think Gundam posing with lightsaber with explosion in background, you know? And like I said, it's replicated all the time. First episode of Zeta Gundam has the same shot, you know? So, yeah, and anytime something's parodying Gundam, they use that shot. So it was obvious that it was a reference to this classic Gundam shot happening there, and I was like, you know, big fucking fist pump moment for me as a Gundam fan and anime fan in general, you know, to see that on the theater. And then we get another cool moment after they beat the robot or the kaiju. They take one, they jump in, and we actually get to see what the inside of the rift looks like and what the enemy, what the monster's dimension looks like. Yeah. And that's cool, because I knew it was going to happen, but I knew only this movie would do that. Right. You know, would actually show the origins of the monsters, which was pretty cool. And this is the point where I should mention that what they do is, because the nuclear bomb that they were going to use, that was strapped onto the Australian Jaeger, the guy who was like the ace pilot, because he had to go out with the captain, because his dad got injured in the last fight. He couldn't go, so he used to pilot with his dad, but he pilots with the black guy instead. Right. And so they go out, they have the bomb, but they were going to lose. Like, there was no way they were going to beat the 3 kaiju. So they have to detonate the bomb there.
Which I thought was cool how they did that, especially, like, when it exploded. Like, all the water just, like, got, like, blown away. And then it all comes back. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. It was an epic shot.
And so they have to detonate the bomb to take out the monsters, because Gypsy Danger was too damaged to, like, save them when the monster was coming at them. So, but the thing is, Gypsy Danger is nuclear, as explained earlier, while the other ones are not. And I think that he mentioned Giant Robo as an influence, and this was hugely important to Giant Robo, because in the story of Giant Robo, or especially the OVA, because the 1990s Giant Robo OVA, I don't know if you haven't seen it, have you?
No, I haven't.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately, I have not seen it.
Your homework. Immediately watch Giant Robo. I think I gave the DVDs to Victor, and that's why they're not over there. But you need to see that badly, because it's an all-time classic, right? Because the original Giant Robo is one of the oldest Giant Robot series, and it was a nuclear-powered giant robot. But in the 90s OVA, which is done by Yasuhiro Imagawa, who's the same guy who did G Gundam and Shin Mazinger. Right. Which, of course, you've seen those and you know they're fucking amazing. Right. So, yeah, Giant Robo is actually his masterpiece, like, considered to be his masterpiece. It was a 6-episode OVA that took him 10 years to make, because each episode would go, like, way over budget. The show wasn't selling super well, so it was basically like a passion project that was costing too much and taking too long. And it doesn't even have a real like, none of his shows have a real ending. Like, you remember the end of Shin Mazinger. Right. It totally, like, leaves it open for a sequel. And Giant Robo does the same thing, but in the context of the story, it's just this insanely epic, tragic, beautiful story. But the plot was that Giant Robo was a nuclear robot, and then they discovered a new kind of energy that like changes the whole world, right?
Right.
So this is like in one of those like utopian futures where they have this new form of energy that's taking over, but then like the villains are trying to manipulate it and do the wrong thing with it. And the whole conflict is that Giant Robo shouldn't exist anymore because he's dangerous. He's made of a nuclear reactor.
Right.
But because the bad guy can get control over this other kind of energy, Giant Robo is like the only, thing that can actually fight. Also, Giant Robo has emotions and can cry, so it's fucking weird.
Right.
But yeah, the fact that it was nuclear was like, and that it was itself a nuclear reactor was a huge part of the story, and it definitely harkens back to that with Gypsy Danger and with the black guy, because he said he was part of the first generation of the Jaegers, and they were nuclear and they didn't have proper radiation defense.
Well, yeah, because they because they weren't really concerned about that at the time.
They were rushing to try to fight the giant robots. So
you mean giant
monsters. So when he was a pilot, he got, because he's like dying in the movie, which no one really knows except for the girl. And, he reveals that it's because of the nuclear power that he was exposed to so much radiation that it made him sick, and he's been dying since, and he's like pretty close to death anyways by the end when he has to make like a heroic sacrifice. So, yeah, like the theme of radiation and nuclear power is definitely somewhat present, and I feel like that was like a giant shout out to Giant Robo.
Right.
Especially in that they have to blow up the Jaeger to actually, close the portal and everything in the end. So, yeah. And then they save the day, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So, anything else we need to add? The music. Obvious cult, like when the kaiju are sort of winning, there's a theme that plays.
It's kind of like the kaiju theme, I guess you could call it.
And it is clearly a throwback to the Godzilla theme.
Yeah.
Like
very bombastic.
Yeah. Dun, 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 like that kind of sound,
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, anything else you want to add? Any notes you have about the movie? Things that we did not touch on quite? Maybe to do with influences or your experience with kaiju? Because maybe explain just why this movie means so much to you personally.
Well, first of all, I am a huge Godzilla fan. I would definitely list it up there with probably like in my like top 4 favorite things of all time.
Just favorite things in general.
Yeah.
What would be your top 5? I need to know.
Top 5. Venture Brothers. I guess I can't really put it in any particular order, but Venture Bros, Gaki no Tsukai, Godzilla.
What is Gaki no Tsukai? Is that show with the 5 comedians and they like...
Yeah, they do like Batsu games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Godzilla and...
You said Go Nagai first, right?
And Go Nagai.
Or no, you said Venture Brothers, Go Nagai, Godzilla...
No, I said Gaki no Tsukai.
Right, Gaki no Tsukai, and Godzilla would be in there.
Right.
And then RuPaul's Drag Race.
I guess you could put that in there.
I wanted to...
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to make fun of your obsession with RuPaul's Drag Race, which we might do a podcast about logo. It'll be all you talking.
Right.
But because I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about all these logo shows.
Yeah, well... We can save that for the next podcast.
Right. But for now, yeah, Godzilla is one of your favorite things of all time.
Yes. I haven't seen much of Gamera, though definitely after seeing Pacific Rim, because that was the thing, because like what I was going to do, I was going to watch, just like classic like giant monster, movies, obviously like Godzilla and stuff like that, just in anticipation for Pacific Rim. But then I was thinking like, I don't think that's a good idea. Right. Because I think it would kind of burn me out.
Right. It's better to see the movie and then get inspired to go do that.
Exactly.
And then go see it again.
Exactly.
Be even more hype the next time. So, like when you start, because those monsters do look more like Gamera than Godzilla monsters, I'd say.
Well, I definitely remember reading that the basis for like each individual like kaiju was definitely like animal. Like it's definitely based off of like an animal. Like the first like the
shark head is what they call like one of them.
Well, yeah, but like the first one that Gypsy Danger fights in the first major battle, it definitely looks like a gorilla. And then just by the way it moves and like how it like how it like walks and stuff like that. And the third, the other one, the one that ends up flying, is definitely. I felt like it was a gecko,
because it does have
like
an elastic tongue.
Yeah,
that it uses to try to get the scientist guy.
So they're definitely. I definitely think the monsters are definitely like more like. I definitely think they're like realistic.
Yeah.
And just because they are based off of like actual animals, and but obviously
the last one looks like fucking Satan.
Yeah, that one looked like a fucking like a chimera of some sort. Yeah, the one that the first one that Gypsy Danger killed in the final battle kind of looked like almost like a hammerhead shark or something like that.
That was the shark head.
Yeah, definitely. I will definitely be watching giant robot and giant monster movies after this.
And for Victor,
and definitely tokusatsu shows.
Because we saw this with Boyd, Victor, and our friend Brando, and Victor was as hype as you were because he's a giant robot fanboy. He owns a huge collection. It was almost like
he was hyped because of giant robots, and I was hyped for it because I
mean, Victor loves monsters too. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I'm saying
and you love robots too.
Well, I mean, yeah. But he likes giant robots more. I like giant monsters.
Like if they make models out of like the giant robots in this movie, I'm sure he's gonna buy them.
Right.
It's
definitely a hobby that I've been trying to pick up. Is like doing like model building and stuff like that.
They're just expensive as fuck.
Yeah, and that's ironically enough. I think it's in one of the podcasts, the one with the two guys who did BioShock.
Right.
Where like they're asking him like if he has like any time to do like anything else since he's so busy making all these having all these like various projects,
right?
And he's like pretty much like no, like the only thing that he pretty much gets like all of because like his family is into the same things that he is,
right?
So he naturally gets to see everything that he wants to see.
Right.
But the one thing that he said that he has absolutely no time for anymore is model building.
Right. So he used to be into it, but he can't do it anymore.
Yeah, just because he's so goddamn busy.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to know. The robots. I was gonna bring this up because, like I said, obviously Giant Robo is an influence, and that's very classic old robot, and all the robot designs are very old school.
Definitely.
None of them are modern robot designs.
Definitely because, like, I think they're like more themed.
Yeah.
Theme based.
They throw back to like old Go Nagai robots, old. Yeah. 60s, 70s. What's the Getter Robo? That's what I'm thinking of. They're a lot more Getter Robo-esque.
Yeah, definitely.
Than anything else, because Getter Robo had more of those like weirdly shaped robots that that don't necessarily make sense but have a theme kind of thing.
Right.
Definitely not modern at all with the designs.
No, definitely not. They're clunky. They're very robotic.
Very slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is old school. If you've seen, I guess Big O would actually be a really apt comparison for the main Gypsy Danger.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Big O is a throwback itself.
Yeah.
But the fact that it has the giant thing in its chest, and the fact that it has the rocket punches, definitely. Which, I mean, rocket punch was also. It doesn't have shoot your hand off rocket punch.
Well, no.
Like Mazinger.
If it would have gotten to that level, I would have just like flipped my shit.
I would have gone up and been like,
dude, like seriously, dude. I mean, that was one of the things that bothered me was just the crowd. I mean, they were into it,
right?
But I wanted them to be like more into it.
Yeah.
Which I guess I can't really.
You're not gonna find a crowd who's going to have your level of appreciation. Like, even if they like it, they like it on the level of summer blockbuster. No one there was a Gundam fan.
Right.
No one there was a Godzilla fan.
Right.
At least not in like a really meaningful way. Maybe the guys who were sitting right in front of us who stuck through the credits like we did and looked pretty nerdy might have been on that level. But we were definitely the most excited people in the crowd. You and Victor especially, and Brando were all like, Victor kicked me. Oh shit!
Dude,
oh fuck!
You probably couldn't hear me just because of because that was like the main reason why I wanted to go to AMC. It's because I knew that their sound system was going to be loud.
Right.
Compared to Regal, which
Regal sucks. They have the shittiest sound system. Like,
I knew like
I don't even want to go there anymore. Like, I've had enough experiences where I was upset with their sound that I'm like, fuck this, I don't want to go there.
Yeah. Like, that's the reason why I wanted to go to AMC, because I wanted to get the full effect, and I wanted to like feel that shit.
And
in
it was
my body.
cool because we the theater that they gave us was tiny.
Yeah.
It was weirdly
like,
small.
It was a theater that you would get, like, for a movie that's been in, like, in the theater for, like, you know, a month.
Right.
Or two.
And it was, I mean, it filled up, which was cool, but...
Yeah, because there was actually... I saw people, like, come in and realize that the shit was fucking packed and left.
And they were doing... there was more than one theater showing it, so it's possible we had... I mean, they obviously had it in 3D IMAX, which we're thinking of going back to see in 3D.
Well, they actually had 4 different showings for non 3D.
Yeah.
They had one at it was at 7 o'clock, 8:30, 9, 10, and then 10 o'clock. Which I found out after I bought my ticket that for the IMAX 3D at 10 o'clock, that you would be able to purchase a like a kind of like a special edition Pacific Rim poster.
Oh shit!
That I wanted to get. I was like, fuck.
That sucks. That is it not possible to get it at all now?
Maybe. I mean, I was going to like ask.
Yeah. When you like go back.
Well, I was going to ask when we were at the theater, you know, earlier, but you know, I just wanted, you know, for us to get our seats.
Yeah. And
you know, get comfortable and all that shit. So.
And good thing we did because it did fill up.
Yeah, I'm glad we got the seats that we got because I would have been pissed if we got, you know,
front seats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. I mean, both of us are obviously recommending this movie.
Yeah, like
I mean, I thoroughly enjoy. Don't let my and I ended up not being very negative at all. I mostly praised it, just because to me, I mean, obviously I love the movie, but I'm never gonna be on the level of excitement you and Victor are on, where it's like this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
But also Victor's favorite movie of all time is Godzilla Final Wars.
Which me personally, I adore that movie to death.
Right.
But you know, it's not one of my favorites as far as like Godzilla movies.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not gonna be like my personal top of 2013 probably, but I could easily see why it's you and Victor's top of 2013.
Yeah.
It is what you paid for.
Exactly.
It is a giant robot versus giant monster movie that's totally cool and very Guillermo Del Toro.
Totally.
But it will not top because Hellboy 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Right.
And it doesn't to me have that sort of timelessness that Hellboy 2 has.
I would agree with that. Like I would definitely have to watch Hellboy 2.
Like,
I would actually want to watch Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2.
Yeah, I still need to fucking see Hellboy 1 all the way through. I've never seen it like from start to finish.
I remember seeing Hellboy in theaters.
Wow.
Like yeah.
I saw most of it on TV or with you or something like 2004. And then, I've seen, bits and pieces of it since. But Hellboy 2, for some reason, I've seen, 5 or 6 times. Just because it kept coming on and I kept watching it.
Yeah.
I just see, oh, shit, Hellboy 2.
I remember when I first liked Hellboy, I loved it a lot. But the people that I was hanging out with that saw the movie with me didn't like it. And I was like, I couldn't, I guess it was just just me being young and wanted to fit in.
Did you remember to borrow those Hellboy volumes?
Yeah.
Did you read those yet at all?
No, I haven't had a chance to read them just because I've been so busy at work. That's the only the reason why I haven't finished writing the next short film, and the reason why
you're at work all the time.
Yeah.
But at least we got time to see Pacific Rim and definitely get that checked off.
Yeah.
And now we've done an hour-and-a-half podcast about it.
Yes. It's also worth mentioning that there was several... I literally had goosebumps throughout the entire movie.
Uh-huh.
And just because of just how fucking, magnificent this was, I almost cried.
Yeah, not from the emotion of the script, but from the emotion of the powerful imagery.
Yes.
It's definitely a movie that if you have been wanting this, it will sate you. Because Victor said, he's like, I've wanted this my whole life. I've always wanted a big budget Hollywood giant robot movie that felt like the shows I watch. Not like Transformers where it doesn't feel like a fucking giant robot movie. It feels like some dumb Hollywood whatever. And this was a giant robot, a giant monster.
And hopefully this kind of opens the door for, more shit like this.
If it does well.
Yeah,
which we're hoping.
Which, pray, people, go out and see this fucking movie because it needs to beat Grown Ups 2.
Right. If it doesn't beat Grown Ups 2, we're all going to be really pissed.
Yeah.
Because that movie is slated to do really well, and it looks horribly awful.
Which I have no idea how they even got a sequel.
But people apparently love Grown Ups.
Because it's fucking Adam Sandler, man.
I don't get it. I really
like
don't.
I don't understand.
But
like
we're not gonna end this in a place of negativity
Yeah.
over Grown Ups 2. We're gonna end it in a place of positivity over Pacific Rim. Go see it in theaters. If you have any inkling towards giant robots and giant monsters, go see it. If you're the kind of person who likes Oscar bait, you're mostly concerned with like character development and stuff, maybe not for you. If you want like something with a great script and dialogue and acting, but you know, you're not getting it. But if you want spectacle, and you want spectacle that fucking matters and works and harkens back to something and has like not just some Hollywood exec said, "Oh, this is what's popular, make it." This is like a lineage on display. I'd say it's like the
I would say this
like
is
the
just
Avengers, you know.
Yeah, I would say that this is just another piece of like, you know, giant monster history.
Right.
Like this is just the next movie in that line.
It's part of a lineage, and if that lineage matters at all to you, this movie will be brilliant.
It's not paying. I feel like it's not paying like homage to like, you know, the giant monster movies. It is a part of the timeline of like
it's
Godzilla.
It's not like
giant...
it's not one of those movies that's hearkening to. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's part of the. It is the beast it worships. Like I said, it's not a fanboy movie.
It's not a meta film.
Yeah, it's not. That's a good way of putting it. Even though it obviously harkens back to all these old movies.
Yeah, it takes like, you know, tropes from like those movies.
But
and stuff
rather
like that.
than being referential, it just embodies it.
Yeah,
you know, it is that. It is a giant. It's a classic giant monster kaiju movie. It's not calling back to it, and I guess it's the opposite of like the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Whereas that movie. Because this is one of the biggest criticisms Movie Bob had over that movie, was he said that it harkens back to the old show, but in a way that's making fun of it. Like, oh, that's old.
Well, yeah.
We're so much smarter and cooler.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like it was trying to reinvent the Lone Ranger.
Right.
As like the next like Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Right, but while making fun of what was the Lone Ranger.
I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil you for the Lone Ranger, because I highly doubt anyone's going to go see it.
Right.
Like, because at the end, I guess, like, I've never seen the Lone Ranger. Right. I have no idea, like, you know, just like the backstory and stuff like that. But I guess I knew that his saying was like, "Hi-ho, sailor."
Right. Silver
or whatever. Right. And like he says that at the end of the movie, and then Tonto, Johnny Depp's character, is like, "Please do not ever do that again." Right, because
it's making fun of it, like it's calling back to it, but in a way that's like subtly ashamed.
Yeah,
and that's a common Hollywood thing where they're trying to say like that, like they're doing whenever they do something nerdy, they try to like shame the nerdy aspect.
Yeah,
of it. This movie fully embraces the nerdiness. It owns up to its scientist characters who are like cheesy as fuck. It doesn't make fun of them for being cheesy. It's never like, "Oh, you nerds." Like, no, they are the scientists. This is how they're supposed to be.
The cool thing is about all this is that next year we will be getting Godzilla.
Right. A Godzilla remake that's actually going to be legit.
And the cool thing is that they're not using... Because the thing with the guy who's directing it... He doesn't use a lot of green screen.
Right.
What he does is that he just implements the CG within the fucking the scene.
Right.
So from what I've read, there's gonna be very little CG in Godzilla.
Right.
Or very little green screen, I should say.
Right.
And then all the CG is just gonna be added in within the movie.
Definitely a movie to look forward to, because it's...
And for a
this
while...
guy is... He's like an up-and-coming Del Toro. He's a monster movie guy.
Yeah.
So this guy is going to know what he's talking about, you know.
Like, he's definitely one of those guys who is... He knows... He obviously, he doesn't have... He's not... I guess he kind of has the same background as Del Toro, where they're good in effects, but they're the exact opposite. Del Toro's good in practical effects, while this guy is better in computer animated effects.
I see.
Because he did all of the computer animation for his movie Monsters, which I do recommend to people go see, and I mean, again, which for a while when both the Godzilla movie and Pacific Rim were announced, it was rumored at the beginning that they were one and the same.
Right.
Like, Pacific Rim was or Godzilla, or Pacific Rim was masking as Godzilla or whatever.
Right, but this is not true.
Yeah.
And now we know that there will be a Godzilla movie, and maybe it will usher in or at least, if not usher in a new age of giant robot or giant monster shows, at least it will get some fandom for those.
Yeah,
maybe
and
get people to
continue
look back
and continue on and stuff like that.
Introduce a new generation to the magic of giant monsters.
You know, we have all these other movies that kind of they introduce these kind of movies to a whole new generation, and I feel like that's what they're doing with giant robots and giant monsters and stuff like that.
If we manage to get giant robots that aren't Transformers to become a genre, that would be very nice.
That would be awesome.
Very nice to see more. If we could get something with some more modern design, because I like the more modern designs.
Yeah. Which, now, after seeing Pacific Rim, I'm curious to see the Asylum production Atlantic Rim.
What is that?
It's like a spoof. You know the guys who make like Sharktopus and Two-Headed Shark and stuff like those guys made a spoof of Pacific Rim.
Called Atlantic Rim.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Which I'm curious to see.
But
just to see how fucking shitty it is.
Yeah, so overall, Pacific Rim. Da-da-da-da.
Perfect. Just pure perfection.
Yeah, whatever flaws it has, while worth mentioning, are not like any kind of deal breakers. If you're in for this kind of, I mean, like I said, it's going to be a polarizing movie. It's either going to be for you or not for you. But if it's for you, you're going to love it. You're not going to have any complaints with it.
Yeah.
So, that about does it for Pacific Rim Cast. Say goodbye.
Later, guys.
Goodbye. Oh, and you'll be hearing Boyd again a lot because we already did a few podcasts, but this one will come out first because it's current. Topic,
yeah.
I figure I should release it while it's like early into its theater run so people will go see it, like help to hype it up. So yeah, that's all.
Later, guys.